When Michael Jordan's phone rang at 2:17 a.m., his dying brother was about to destroy everything he believed about himself. Larry had kept a terrible secret for 40 years, one that accidentally created the greatest basketball player who ever lived. The high school rejection that made Michael unstoppable? His own brother caused it. The pain that drove him to 6 championships? It was all based on a lie. What did Larry do when they were kids that changed Michael's entire life? And why? Did Michael's reaction to the truth break everyone's heart? The phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Michael Jordan rolled over in his king-sized bed, squinting at the bright screen in the darkness of his Chicago mansion. Most people would ignore a call this late. But Michael wasn't most people. He'd learned long ago that late-night calls usually meant trouble. The caller ID made his heart skip a beat. Larry. His younger brother never called this late. Larry was careful about Michael's sleep schedule, respectful of his privacy. In their 50-plus years as brothers, Larry had maybe called after midnight 3 times. Each time, something terrible had happened. Michael's hand trembled slightly as he swiped to answer. Larry? What's wrong? The voice that came through the phone was barely recognizable. It was shaky, broken, like Larry had been crying for hours. Mike, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you 40 years ago. Michael sat up straight, instantly alert. His brother sounded desperate, scared in a way that made Michael's chest tighten with worry. What is it? Are you okay? Where are you? I'm at home. I'm not okay, Mike. I haven't been okay for a long time. Michael swung his legs over the side of the bed, his mind racing. Larry had been battling cancer for months, but he'd been private about it. He always said he was fine, that the treatments were working. But this voice didn't sound like someone who was fine. Talk to me, Larry. What's going on? There was a long pause. Michael could hear his brother's labored breathing, like he was struggling to find the words. Remember when we were kids? That summer when you were 15 and I was 13? When you got cut from the varsity basketball team at Laney High? Michael's blood turned cold. Of course he remembered. That day had changed everything. The rejection that Coach Herring delivered had crushed his teenage heart, but also ignited a fire that burned for the rest of his career. Every championship, every record, every moment of greatness could be traced back to that painful afternoon when his name wasn't on the varsity roster. Of course I remember. Why are you bringing this up now? Another pause. This one longer, more painful. Mike, there's something about that day I never told you. Something I've carried for 40 years. It's eating me alive, brother. I can't take it anymore. Michael's mind raced. What could Larry possibly know about that day that he hadn't shared? They'd talked about it countless times over the years. Larry had been there to comfort him, to encourage him to keep trying. His little brother had been his biggest supporter through that difficult time. What are you talking about, Larry? Larry's voice cracked. I can't do this. Over the phone. Can you come over? Please. I know it's late, but I need to see you. I need to look you in the eyes when I tell you. Michael was already reaching for his clothes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Mike, wait. Larry's voice was urgent now. Before you come over, I need you to know something else. I'm dying, Mike. The cancer spread faster than the doctors expected. I have maybe 2 weeks left. 3 at most. The phone slipped from Michael's hand and clattered onto the hardwood floor. He stared at it for a moment, his brother's voice calling his name from the speaker. 2 weeks? Larry was dying in 2 weeks? Michael picked up the phone with shaking hands. Larry? Larry, are you there? I'm here, Mike. 2 weeks? The doctors said 2 weeks. Maybe less. That's why I'm calling. That's why I can't wait anymore. I need you to know the truth before I'm gone. About that day. About what really happened when you got cut from the team. Michael's legs felt weak. He sat back down on the bed, trying to process what his brother was telling him. Larry was dying. Larry had a secret about the worst day of his teenage life. And somehow, these two things were connected. What truth, Larry? What are you talking about? I can't tell you over the phone. I've tried to say the words, but they won't come out. I need to see your face. I need to show you something. Something I've kept hidden all these years. Michael's heart pounded. His brother was dying and had called him at 2 a.m. to reveal some secret about the day that shaped his entire life. Nothing made sense, but everything felt urgent. I'm coming over right now. Thank you, Mike. And Michael? Yeah, I'm sorry. For everything. For waiting so long to tell you. For being a coward. Larry's voice broke completely. For what? I did to you. The line went quiet except for the sound of Larry crying. Michael had heard his brother cry before, but never like this. This was the sound of a man carrying unbearable weight. Larry, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. We're brothers. We'll get through this together. I don't know if you'll still want to be my brother after you hear what I have to say. That's impossible. You're my family. Nothing changes that. I hope you still feel that way in an hour. Michael grabbed his keys and headed for the door. I'll be there soon. Try to stay calm, okay? Okay. Mike, yeah. I love you. I've always loved you. Even when I made the worst mistake of my life. I need you to remember that. I love you too, Larry. I'll be right there. Michael hung up and ran to his car. As he drove through the empty Chicago streets, his mind raced with questions. What secret could Larry have kept for 40 years? What did it have to do with getting cut from the basketball team? And why was he so scared to tell him? The more Michael thought about it, the more worried he became. His brother was dying, and he was terrified of some secret from their childhood. What could possibly be so bad that Larry had carried it for 4 decades? As Michael pulled into Larry's apartment complex, he realized he was about to find out. His brother was waiting for him with a truth that would change everything. And somehow, Michael knew that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same. He took a deep breath and walked toward his brother's door, not knowing that the next hour would rewrite the story of his entire life. Michael stood outside Larry's apartment door for a moment, his hand frozen inches from the wood. He could hear movement inside, slow, careful footsteps. His brother was sick, dying, and about to reveal something that had haunted him for 40 years. The door opened before Michael could knock. Larry looked terrible. His face was gaunt, his cheeks hollow. He'd lost at least 30 pounds since Michael had seen him last month. The cancer was winning, and it showed in every line of his tired face. Thanks for coming, Larry whispered, stepping aside to let Michael in. The apartment was small but neat. Photos covered every surface. Family pictures, shots of Michael's career, images of their parents who had died years ago. It was like a museum of their shared history, and Michael had never noticed how much of it centered around him. Larry, you look dying? Yeah, I know. Larry managed a weak smile. The doctors were being generous when they said 2 weeks. It might be less. Michael's throat tightened. His little brother, the kid who used to follow him everywhere, was fading away. But that wasn't why Larry had called him here. Sit down. Mike, please. They settled on Larry's old couch, the same one he'd had for 15 years. Michael remembered watching Bulls games on this couch, celebrating championships, sharing memories. Now it felt like a place where everything would change. You said you had something to tell me about the day I got cut from varsity. Larry nodded, his hands shaking slightly. Before I tell you, I need you to remember something. We were just kids. Back then, I was 13, you were 15. Kids make mistakes. Terrible mistakes. What kind of mistake? Larry stood up slowly and walked to a bookshelf. He pulled down an old shoebox, the kind their mother used to store photos in. His hands trembled as he carried it back to the couch. Do you remember how close we were back then? How we did everything together? Michael smiled despite his worry. Of course. You were my shadow. Mom used to joke that you were my biggest fan. I was your biggest fan. But I was also Larry's voice cracked. I was so jealous of you, Mike. So jealous it made me sick. Jealous? Of what? Of everything. You were taller, stronger, better at sports. Mom and Dad talked about your games all the time. When we went to family dinners, everyone asked about your basketball. I felt invisible. Michael had never known this. Larry had always seemed happy, supportive, proud of his older brother's success. I never knew you felt that way. I hid it well. But that summer, when you were trying out for varsity, it got worse. You were so confident, so sure you'd make the team. You talked about nothing else. And I snapped. Larry opened the shoebox with shaking hands. Inside were newspaper clippings, old photos, and what looked like a letter. The paper was yellowed with age, folded and refolded many times. The day before Coach Herring announced the team, I did something terrible. Something I've regretted every single day since. Michael's heart pounded. What did you do? Larry pulled out the letter with trembling fingers. Michael could see his father's letterhead at the top, but the handwriting looked strange, like someone had been trying to copy it. I wrote a letter to Coach Herring. I pretended it was from Dad. Michael's blood turned cold. You what? I forged Dad's signature. I used his letterhead from the office. I wrote to your coach and asked him to cut you from the team." The room spun around Michael. He stared at his brother, unable to process what he was hearing. You asked him to cut me? I told him you were becoming too obsessed with basketball, that you were ignoring your studies and becoming arrogant. I asked him to humble you by not making the team." Michael's hands shook as he reached for the letter. The words blurred as he read them, but he could make out the fake request, the lies about his character, the suggestion that rejection would be good for him. "I thought it would just knock you down a peg," Larry continued, tears streaming down his face. "I thought you'd still make the team, but maybe you'd appreciate it more. I never thought he'd actually cut you. But he did cut me." Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "He did. And I watched you come home that day, crying, broken. I watched you lock yourself in your room for hours. I watched you question everything about yourself. And I knew I had done something unforgivable." Michael stood up abruptly, the letter falling to the floor. He walked to the window, staring out at the dark street. His entire life had been built on a lie. The rejection that fueled his legendary career, the chip on his shoulder that drove him to greatness, the pain that made him stronger. It had all been orchestrated by his own brother. "Do you understand what you did to me?" Michael turned back to Larry, his voice rising. "That day destroyed me. I went home and cried for hours. I felt worthless, like I wasn't good enough. I know. I watched it happen." "You watched it happen? You caused it to happen." Larry collapsed back into his chair, looking smaller than ever. "I was 13 and stupid and jealous. I didn't think about the consequences. I just wanted you to feel small for once, the way I felt every day. So you sabotaged my life. I sabotaged your high school basketball team. I had no idea it would change your entire life." Michael paced the small living room, his mind racing. Every memory from that day came flooding back. The confidence he'd felt going into tryouts. The shock of seeing his name missing from the roster. The shame of facing his teammates who had made the team. All these years, I thought Coach Herring just didn't think I was good enough. I used that rejection to fuel everything I did. Every game, every practice, every championship. I was trying to prove him wrong. I know. I watched you become obsessed with proving everyone wrong. I watched you work harder than anyone else. I watched you become the greatest player who ever lived. Because of a lie. Because of something you did. Yes. Larry's voice was barely audible. I created the drive that made you great. And I've hated myself for it every single day since. Michael stopped pacing and stared at his brother. Larry looked broken, defeated, like a man who had been carrying a mountain on his shoulders for 40 years. "Why now? Why tell me this now?" "Because I'm dying, and I can't take this secret with me. And because..." Larry reached into the shoebox again and pulled out a small notebook. "Because I kept a record of everything. Every time your pain from that day drove you to greatness. I wrote it down." Michael's legs gave out. He sat back down on the couch, his head in his hands. His brother had not only caused his greatest pain, but had documented how that pain shaped his entire life. "Show me," Michael whispered. Larry opened the notebook with shaking hands. The pages were filled with dates and observations, spanning 4 decades. Each entry was a window into how Michael's drive, rooted in that high school rejection, had pushed him to extraordinary heights. "This is how I've lived with what I did," Larry said quietly. "By watching you turn my terrible mistake into something beautiful. By seeing you become everything I always knew you could be." Michael looked up at his dying brother, seeing him clearly for the first time. Larry had spent 40 years carrying this secret, watching from the shadows as his jealous act created a legend. "I don't know if I can forgive you for this," Michael said finally. "I don't expect you to. I just needed you to know the truth. And I needed you to know that watching you become great has been the most beautiful and terrible thing I've ever experienced." The brothers sat in silence, the weight of 4 decades of secrets filling the small apartment. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the room. Michael realized that his life, everything he thought he knew about himself, was about to change forever. Michael picked up the forged letter from where it had fallen on the floor. In the morning light streaming through Larry's window, he could see the careful way his brother had copied their father's handwriting. Every loop, every slant, it was almost perfect. "How long did it take you to write this?" Michael asked, his voice hollow. Larry wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. 3 hours. I practiced Dad's signature on scrap paper for weeks before. I got brave enough to use his real letterhead. Weeks. Michael looked up sharply. This wasn't just a moment of anger. You planned this. I was 13, Mike. I spent weeks being angry, feeling invisible. Every day, you came home talking about basketball, about making varsity, about how great it would be. And every day, I felt smaller. Michael studied the letter again. The words were cruel but clever. Larry had written it to sound like a concerned father who thought his son needed to be humbled. He'd painted Michael as arrogant and obsessed, suggesting that rejection would teach him valuable life lessons. You made me sound like a spoiled brat. I was trying to give Coach Herring a reason that would make sense. If I'd just said, don't pick Michael, he would have ignored it. But if he thought Dad was worried about your character, he'd listen. Michael finished the thought, understanding dawning on his face. You knew exactly what you were doing. Larry nodded miserably. I was smarter than I should have been. I thought about it from every angle. I even mailed it from the post office downtown so it wouldn't have our neighborhood postmark. Michael felt sick. This wasn't just a childish prank gone wrong. This was a calculated plan by a jealous brother who wanted to destroy his dreams. Did anyone else know? Mom? Dad? Dad figured it out eventually. About 5 years later, he found the practice sheets in my old desk when we moved out of the house. He confronted me when you were in college. Michael's head snapped up. Dad knew? And he never told me. He was furious at first, angrier than I'd ever seen him. But then he looked at your college stats, your championships, everything you'd accomplished. And he said something I'll never forget. What? He said, maybe the worst thing Larry ever did was also the best thing that ever happened to you. Michael stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there was the United Center, where he'd won 6 championships. Down the street was his old high school, where this whole mess had started. His entire legendary career was built on a foundation of lies. What did Dad make you promise? That I'd tell you someday. He said the truth always comes out eventually, and it would be better coming from me than from someone else. But you never did tell me. Larry's voice broke. I tried so many times. After your first championship, I wrote you a letter confessing everything. But then I watched you celebrate with the team, saw how happy you were, and I couldn't do it. You were protecting yourself, not me. Maybe. Or maybe I was protecting the version of you that my mistake had created. You were Michael Jordan, the greatest player ever. How could I tell you that you became great because your little brother was jealous? Michael turned back to face Larry. His brother looked so small on the couch, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm morning. The cancer was eating him alive, and so was this secret. There's more, isn't there? I can see it in your face. Larry nodded slowly. Coach Herring didn't just take the letter at face value. He called Dad to confirm it. Michael's stomach dropped. What happened? Dad was traveling for work that week. Remember? He was in Detroit for 3 days, meeting with clients. Coach Herring couldn't reach him. So the coach just cut me based on a letter he couldn't verify. He tried calling for 2 days. When he finally reached Dad on Friday, the team roster had already been posted. Dad told him he never wrote any letter, but by then it was too late. The season was starting Monday. Michael sank back onto the couch. So Dad tried to fix it. He drove straight to the school. He and Coach Herring talked for an hour, but the coach said changing the roster after it was posted would be unfair to the other players. He promised Dad you'd get a fair shot at varsity the next year. A fair shot that never mattered because I was already broken by then. Larry pulled out another paper from the shoebox. It was a handwritten note from their father to Coach Herring, demanding an explanation. Dad wrote this letter the day after he got home. He was furious. He threatened to go to the principal, to the school board. He wanted justice for you. Michael read his father's angry words, feeling the love and protection in every line. His dad had fought for him, just like he'd always fought for his kids. What stopped him? You did. What do you mean? Larry's eyes filled with tears again. You came home that Friday and told Dad you didn't want to make a big deal about being cut. You said you'd prove yourself next year. You said the rejection made you hungry to work harder. Michael remembered that conversation. He'd been embarrassed, hurt, but determined not to look like a winner. He'd told his father he could handle it. Dad realized that fighting the decision might hurt you more than help you. You were already turning the pain into motivation. He didn't want to take that away from you. So he let it go. He let it go. But he never forgot. And he never forgave me. Michael looked at his dying brother with new eyes. Larry had spent 40 years carrying not just his own guilt, but their father's disappointment too. Dad was cold to you after that, wasn't he? He wasn't mean. He still loved me. But things changed between us. He looked at me differently. Like, he wasn't sure who I really was. Because you'd shown him who you really were. A kid capable of destroying his brother's dreams. Larry flinched at the harsh words, but he didn't deny them. Yes, that's exactly who I was. And that's who you've been living with all these years. Every single day, every time you won a game, broke a record, won a championship, I felt pride and guilt at the same time. Pride because you were my brother. Guilt because I knew I'd helped create the drive that made it possible. Michael stood up again, pacing the small room. His entire identity was crumbling. The rejection that had defined him, the chip on his shoulder, that made him unstoppable, the fire that burned in him for 2 decades. It was all based on his brother's jealousy. Do you know what the worst part is, Larry? What? I thank God for that rejection. I actually got on my knees and thanked God for making me stronger through adversity. I thought it was divine intervention, preparing me for greatness. Larry's face crumpled. I'm so sorry, Mike. I'm so sorry for all of it. But you're not sorry for my success, are you? You're not sorry that I became great. Larry was quiet for a long moment. No, he whispered finally. I can't be sorry for that. Watching you become the greatest player who ever lived has been the honor of my lifetime. Even knowing it started with my terrible mistake. Michael stopped pacing and stared at his brother. So you'd do it again? Knowing what you know now. Larry looked up with tears streaming down his face. That's the question. That's tortured me for 40 years, Mike. And I honestly don't know the answer. The brothers sat in the growing daylight, surrounded by the evidence of a secret that had shaped both their lives. Outside, Chicago was waking up. People were starting their days, going to work, living normal lives. But inside this small apartment, 2 brothers were confronting a truth that would change everything they thought they knew about love, family, and the price of greatness. Michael picked up Larry's notebook and opened it to the first page. The entry was dated just 1 week after he'd been cut from varsity. Read it to me, Michael said quietly. I want to hear what you wrote. Larry's voice shook as he read. Mike worked out for 4 hours today. He shot 500 free throws, then ran. Sprints until he threw up. When Mom asked him to come eat dinner, he said he wasn't hungry. He said hunger was for people who were satisfied with losing. I did this to him. I made him this hungry. I don't know if I'm proud or terrified of what I've created. Michael closed his eyes, remembering that day, that feeling, that desperate need to prove everyone wrong. His brother had been watching, documenting, carrying the weight of what he'd done. Keep reading, Michael said. I want to hear it all. Larry's hands trembled as he turned the page. His voice was weak, but he continued reading from the notebook. That had become his confession. October 15th, 1978. Mike made junior varsity, but he's still angry. Coach Smith said he's never seen a sophomore work so hard. Mike stays after every practice, shooting until the janitor kicks him out. When I asked him why he pushes himself so hard, he said, I'm never going to let anyone tell me I'm not good. Enough again. I created this monster. I created this drive. I don't know if I should be proud or ashamed. Michael's chest tightened. He remembered that version of himself. Angry, desperate, fueled by rejection. Keep going. November 3rd, 1978. Mike scored 35 points against Wilmington High. After the game, some college scouts talked to him. When we got home, he told me he played every possession like he was still trying to make varsity. He said he'll never stop, trying to prove Coach Herring wrong. I wanted to tell him the truth right then. But how do you tell your brother that his greatest motivation is built on your lie? Larry paused, coughing violently. The cancer was making it hard for him to breathe, but he forced himself to continue. February 12th, 1979. Mike's junior year. He made varsity this time, of course. First game, he scored 40 points. The local newspaper called him a player with something to prove. If they only knew what he was really trying to prove. If they only knew that his fire comes from a wound. I gave him. Michael stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, Chicago was fully awake now. Cars moved through the streets. People walked to work. Life continued normally. But inside this apartment, Michael was hearing the story of his own transformation through his brother's guilty eyes. I remember that game, Michael said quietly. I felt like I was playing against Coach Herring, not the other team. Every shot was revenge for being cut. I know. I was in the stands, watching you destroy them. And I was so proud and so sick at the same time. Proud because you were incredible. Sick because I knew your anger was my fault. Larry turned several pages, his breathing getting heavier. Here's one from your senior year. March 8th, 1980. Mike's last high school game. They won the state championship. After the game, a reporter asked him about his motivation. Mike said, "I play for everyone who ever doubted me. I play for every coach who said I wasn't good enough." The reporter wrote it up like it was inspiring. But I knew Mike was talking about Coach Herring. I knew he was talking about that day I destroyed his confidence. And I knew that destruction had made him unstoppable. Michael felt his legs getting weak again. He sat back down on the couch, his head in his hands. "You documented my entire high school career. I documented everything. Every game, every interview, every moment when I could see that rejection driving you forward. I had to. It was the only way I could live with what I'd done. By watching me suffer. By watching you turn suffering into greatness. Mike, you have to understand, I wasn't just watching you play basketball. I was watching you become something bigger than basketball. That rejection didn't just make you a better player. It made you stronger, tougher, more determined than anyone else." Larry flipped through more pages, stopping at an entry from college. January 15th, 1982. North Carolina beat Duke by 20. Mike had 28 points and 12 rebounds. After the game, Coach Smith told reporters that Mike plays like he's got something to prove every single night. He said he's never coached a player who hates losing more. I watched the interview from my dorm room and cried, because I knew why Mike hates losing so much. He hates it because I made him feel like a loser when he was 15 years old. Michael looked up at his brother. "You went to my college games. I went to every game I could afford. I sat in the cheap seats, watching you play with that fire I'd lit. And every game, I wanted to run down to the court and tell you the truth. But then you'd make some impossible shot or some incredible play, and I'd think, how can I take this away from him? How can I tell him that his greatest strength comes from my greatest weakness?" Larry's voice was getting weaker, but he kept reading. June 12th, 1984. NBA Draft Day. Mike went third to Chicago. When they called his name, he looked angry instead of happy. Later, he told reporters that getting drafted third just gave him more motivation. He said he'd make the two teams that passed on him regret it for the rest of their lives. I realized that night that I hadn't just created a basketball player. I'd created someone who would turn every slight, every rejection, every doubt into fuel for greatness. Michael remembered that night. He'd been furious about not going first or second. That anger had driven him through his entire rookie season. I used that draft position as motivation for years. I know, and I knew that your ability to turn pain into power came from that day in high school. It came from learning how to be hurt and still fight back. It came from the lesson I accidentally taught you when I was 13 years old. Larry turned to a page from 1991, his first championship year. June 12th, 1991. Mike won his first NBA championship. During the celebration, he broke down crying. He said in interviews that he was thinking about everyone who ever doubted him, everyone who said he couldn't win the big one. I knew he was thinking about Coach Herring. I knew he was thinking about that day he got cut. And I knew that I was watching my terrible mistake become his greatest triumph. Michael's eyes filled with tears. He remembered that moment, holding the championship trophy, feeling like he'd finally proven himself. The little boy who got cut from varsity had become the best player in the world. That championship wasn't just about basketball, was it? Larry asked. It was about proving that 15-year-old kid wrong, proving that you were good enough. Every championship was about that. Every game, every shot, every moment, I was still trying to prove I belonged on that varsity team. Larry nodded sadly. And I was the one who made you feel like you had to prove it. Michael stood up and started pacing again. The weight of 40 years of misdirected motivation was crushing him. Everything he'd accomplished, every record he'd broken, every moment of greatness, it was all built on his brother's lie. Do you know what this means, Larry? Do you understand what you're telling me? Tell me. My entire career, my whole identity, everything I became, it was based on fake rejection. I spent 20 years trying to prove wrong a coach who never really doubted me. I carried a chip on my shoulder that was put there by my own brother. Larry closed the notebook and set it aside. Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. My competitiveness, my drive, my need to win at everything. That all came from the pain you caused me. Yes, the way I treated teammates, the way I pushed everyone around me to be perfect, the way I couldn't enjoy victories because I was always thinking about the next challenge. That came from you too. Larry's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, I created the monster that made you great. And I've watched that monster eat you alive for 40 years. Michael stopped pacing and stared at his dying brother. You didn't just forge a letter, Larry. You rewrote my entire personality. You turned me into someone I never meant to be. I know. And the worst part? I thank you for it. I spent my whole career being grateful for that rejection. I thought it made me stronger. It did make you stronger. But it was based on a lie. Everything I am, everything I've accomplished, it's all fake. Larry struggled to stand up from the couch. When he spoke, his voice had a strength it hadn't had all morning. No, Mike, that's where you're wrong. Your accomplishments aren't fake. Your greatness isn't fake. The pain I caused you was real, and the way you transformed that pain into purpose was real. I may have lit the fire, but you're the one who kept it burning for 20 years. You don't understand, Dash. I understand perfectly. Larry's voice cracked with emotion. I've had 40 years to think about this. I created your motivation, but I didn't create your talent. I gave you anger, but you turned it into excellence. I hurt you, but you chose to let that hurt make you better instead of bitter. Michael stared at his brother, seeing something in Larry's eyes he hadn't seen before. Not just guilt, but genuine admiration. You think I should thank you for this? I think you should understand that what I did to you was terrible and wrong. But what you did with it was beautiful and right. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and made it the foundation of the greatest career in basketball history. The brothers looked at each other across the small living room, 40 years of secrets hanging between them. The sun was high now, flooding the apartment with light. And for the first time since the phone rang at 2:17 a.m., Michael began to see his brother not as the villain of his story, but as someone who had been carrying an impossible burden for 4 decades. There's more, isn't there? Michael asked quietly. More you haven't told me. Larry nodded, his face pale from the effort of their conversation. So much more. About Dad, about Mom, about Coach Herring. About the real reason I'm telling you this now. Michael sat back down, preparing himself for whatever came next. Tell me everything, Larry. I'm ready to hear it all. Larry walked slowly to his bedroom, his movements careful and deliberate. Michael could hear him opening drawers, moving things around. When he returned, he carried a small wooden box that Michael recognized immediately. Is that Dad's old jewelry box? The one he kept his wedding ring in when he worked construction. Mom gave it to me after the funeral. Larry sat down heavily, the box cradled in his lap. There are things in here I was supposed to give you years ago. Michael's heart raced. More secrets, more revelations. He wasn't sure how much more he could handle. Dad left instructions about what to do with these things. He said I could only give them to you after I told you the truth about the letter. Larry opened the box with shaking hands. Inside were several items wrapped in tissue paper, a smaller notebook, some photographs, and what looked like another letter. This notebook isn't mine. It's Dad's. He started writing in it the day he found out what I'd done. He kept writing in it until he died. Michael's throat tightened. Dad kept a record too? He was trying to understand what happened to our family, how one lie could change everything so completely. Larry unwrapped the small notebook and handed it to Michael. The cover was worn leather, soft from years of handling. Michael opened it to the first page and saw his father's familiar handwriting. Read it out loud, Larry said quietly. I need to hear it again. Michael's voice shook as he read. Today I learned that my youngest son destroyed my oldest son's confidence to satisfy his own jealousy. I learned that the rejection that shaped Michael's entire life was orchestrated by his own brother. I don't know which son I'm more disappointed in, Larry for what he did, or Michael for never telling us how much pain he was in. Michael stopped reading and looked up. Dad blamed himself. Keep reading. It gets worse. Larry thinks he created Michael's greatness, but he's wrong. What Larry created was Michael's pain. Michael created his own greatness by refusing to let that pain destroy him. But I failed both my sons that day. I failed Larry by not seeing how invisible he felt. And I failed Michael by not fighting harder to fix the injustice. Michael's hands were shaking now. Dad thought he failed us. He carried guilt too, Mike. We all did. That one letter infected our whole family. Michael turned the page and continued reading. I talked to Coach Herring today. He told me something that makes this whole situation even more tragic. He said he never wanted to cut Michael in the first place. He said Michael was clearly one of the 3 best players in tryouts. But the letter worried him. He thought maybe I knew something about Michael's character that he didn't. He said if he hadn't received that letter, Michael would have made varsity easily. Michael set the notebook down, his face pale. I would have made the team. Without question. Coach Herring told Dad you were the most talented 15-year-old he'd ever seen. The letter was the only reason you got cut. So I was good enough all along. You were better than good enough. You were exceptional. That's what makes this so horrible, Mike. You didn't need rejection to become great. You were already great. Michael stood up and walked to the window again, his mind reeling. Not only had his brother's lie shaped his entire career, but it had been unnecessary. He would have succeeded anyway. There's more, Larry said softly. Dad wrote about the effects on our whole family. Michael returned to the notebook, finding strength in his father's words even as they broke his heart. Larry has become a different child since sending that letter. He's quiet, withdrawn, consumed by guilt. He watches Michael obsessively, documenting every practice, every game, every moment when Michael's drive pushes him to excel. It's like Larry is trying to justify what he did by proving it led to something good. But I can see it's eating him alive. Dad was watching you watch me. Larry nodded. He knew I was documenting everything. He knew I was torturing myself by tracking how my mistakes shaped your life. Michael continued reading. Michael has become someone I barely recognize. The rejection changed him from a confident, happy teenager into someone driven by constant need to prove himself. He works harder than any kid should have to work. He pushes himself until he's exhausted, then pushes harder. Yesterday, I found him in the backyard at midnight, shooting baskets in the dark. When I asked him why, he said he was making sure he'd never disappoint anyone again. I remember that night, Michael whispered. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Coach Herring, about proving him wrong. Dad watched it all happen. He watched you change from a kid who loved basketball into someone who needed basketball to feel worthy. Michael turned several pages, finding entries from his college years. Michael called today to tell us about winning the national championship. He should have been celebrating, but he sounded angry instead of happy. He said it felt good to prove all the doubters wrong. I wanted to tell him there never were any real doubters, just one jealous brother with a pen and some letterhead. But how do you take away someone's greatest motivation? How do you tell them their fire was built on lies? Dad wanted to tell me so many times, but he was afraid it would destroy you. He was afraid that learning the truth would take away your drive, your edge, everything that made you special. Michael found an entry from 1991, the year of his first NBA championship. Watched Michael win his first championship tonight. When they interviewed him, he dedicated the victory to everyone who ever doubted him. My heart broke watching my son celebrate a triumph built on a foundation of deception. He's the greatest player in the world, but he became great for all the wrong reasons. And Larry and I are the only ones who know it. Dad felt guilty about my success. He felt guilty about how you achieved it. He was proud of what you accomplished, but heartbroken about why you felt you had to accomplish it. Larry reached into the box and pulled out a photograph. It showed the 3 of them, Michael, Larry, and their father, taken on the day Michael graduated from high school. Look at our faces in this picture, Larry said. Michael studied the photo. He looked confident but intense, even at 18. Larry looked uncomfortable, guilty, and their father looked sad, like he was carrying a heavy burden. Dad knew that day that both his sons were in pain. You were in pain from rejection you didn't deserve. I was in pain from guilt I couldn't escape. And he was in pain because he couldn't fix either of us. Michael set the photo aside and picked up the last item from the box, another letter, this one addressed to him in his father's handwriting. What's this? Dad's final letter to you. He finished it the week before he died. He gave it to me with instructions to give it to you only after I told you everything. Michael's hands trembled as he held the letter. His father had been gone for 10 years, but holding his final words felt like having him in the room. Should I read it now? That's up to you. But Mike, once you read it, there's no going back. Dad's letter changes everything. It reveals the final piece of this puzzle. Michael looked at the sealed envelope, his father's careful handwriting spelling out his name. Inside was the last secret, The final truth about the lie that had shaped his life. What does it say, Larry? Just tell me. Larry's eyes filled with tears. It says that you weren't the only one who got hurt that day. It says that Coach Herring carried guilt about cutting you for the rest of his career. It says that Mom knew. Something was wrong but never knew what. And it says, Larry paused, struggling to continue. What? It says what? It says that despite everything that happened, despite all the pain and lies and guilt, Dad was proud of both of us. Proud of you for turning rejection into greatness. And proud of me for finally finding the courage to tell you the truth. Michael stared at the letter in his hands. His father's final words, waiting to be read. The last piece of a 40-year-old puzzle that had defined his entire life. He forgave us, Michael said quietly. He forgave us. But the question is, Mike, can you forgive me? Michael looked at his dying brother, seeing not the jealous 13-year-old who had written a terrible letter, but the man who had carried the weight of that mistake for 4 decades. Larry had watched every game, documented every achievement, lived with the knowledge that he had accidentally created a legend. I don't know yet, Michael said honestly, but I want to try. Larry nodded, tears streaming down his face. That's all I can ask for. Michael carefully opened their father's letter, preparing to read the final truth about the day that changed everything. Michael unfolded the letter with trembling hands. His father's handwriting was weaker than usual, shakier, written during his final illness. The date at the top was just 2 weeks before his death. My dearest Michael, he read aloud, his voice catching. If you are reading this, Larry has finally found the courage to tell you about the letter. I have waited 10 years for this day, carrying secrets that were not mine to keep. Larry watched his brother's face, seeing the pain and confusion there. Keep reading, Mike. You will be angry when you learn what Larry did. You will feel betrayed, confused, maybe even lost. You will question everything about who you became and why. But I need you to know something that Larry doesn't know, something I discovered only recently. Michael paused, looking up at Larry. Something you don't know? I have no idea what he's talking about. Dad never told me there was more to the story. Michael continued reading. Last month, I finally tracked down Coach Herring. He's retired now, living in Florida. I called him because I needed to understand exactly what happened that day you got cut. What he told me changes everything. Michael's heart pounded. More secrets. More lies. How deep did this go? Coach Herring said something I never knew. When he received Larry's letter, he didn't just call me to verify it. He also called 3 other coaches who knew you. He called your middle school coach, your AAU coach, and the high school JV coach. He wanted character references. What did they say? Every single one of them told him the same thing. That you were not only talented, but one of the most respectful, hard-working young men they'd ever coached. They said the letter didn't sound like the Michael Jordan they knew. Michael set the letter down, his hands shaking. So Coach Herring knew the letter was probably fake. Keep reading, Larry urged. There's more. Coach Herring told me that he almost threw the letter away. But then something happened that changed his mind. The day before he was supposed to post the varsity roster, he got a visit from someone else. Someone who convinced him that cutting you might actually be the right thing to do. Michael's blood ran cold. Someone else was involved? Who? Larry asked, his face pale. Who else knew about the letter? Michael continued reading, his father's words revealing a truth neither brother had imagined. The person who visited Coach Herring was me, Michael, your own father. The letter slipped from Michael's hands and fluttered to the floor. He stared at Larry in shock, then bent to pick it up again. Dad went to Coach Herring. I don't understand. Larry whispered. Why would Dad do that? Michael's voice shook as he continued. I had seen the letter when Coach Herring called to verify it. When I told him I hadn't written it, he showed it to me during our meeting. I recognized Larry's handwriting. Immediately, I knew my 13-year-old son had forged my signature to hurt his brother. Dad knew right away that you wrote it. Apparently so, but he didn't stop it. I was furious with Larry, but I was also concerned about you, Michael. You had been so confident about making varsity. Maybe too confident. I had watched you become cocky, dismissive of teammates who weren't as talented. I had seen you roll your eyes when coaches gave you advice. The letter was a lie, but maybe the message wasn't. Entirely wrong. Michael stood up abruptly, anger flashing in his eyes. Dad thought I needed to be humbled, so I made a decision that I have regretted every day since. I told Coach Herring not to investigate the letter further. I told him that maybe being cut would teach you important lessons about respect, hard work, and humility. The room fell completely silent. Both brothers stared at the letter in Michael's hands. "Dad, let it happen," Michael said, his voice hollow. He knew Larry forged the letter, and he let me get cut anyway. I convinced Coach Herring that rejection might be good for your character. I thought it would knock you down a peg, make you appreciate basketball more. I thought you'd bounce back stronger and more humble. Michael crumpled the letter in his fist, rage building in his chest. So this wasn't just Larry's fault. Dad was part of it too. I never imagined it would break you the way it did. I never imagined you would carry that rejection for the rest of your life. I thought you'd be sad for a few days, then work harder and make the team the next year. But that's not what happened, Michael said through gritted teeth. What happened? Instead was that I watched my confident son become an angry son. I watched you turn pain into obsession. I watched you work yourself to exhaustion trying to prove everyone wrong. And I realized that I had made a terrible mistake. Larry reached for his brother's arm. "Mike, Dad was trying to help you." Michael jerked away. "Help me? He destroyed me. You wrote the letter, but he could have stopped it. He chose not to. I spent the next 20 years watching you achieve incredible things, but I knew they came from a place of pain that I had allowed to happen. Every championship, every record, every moment of greatness. I was proud of you, but I was also reminded of my failure as a father." Michael began pacing the small apartment, his emotions exploding. "So let me get this straight. Larry forged a letter to get me cut because he was jealous. Dad found out about it immediately, but decided to let it happen because he thought I was too cocky. And both of you watched me suffer for 40 years without telling me the truth." "Mike, please," Larry started. "No, don't, Mike, please me. You both betrayed me. You both lied to me. My entire identity is based on a rejection that you orchestrated and Dad approved of." Michael grabbed the notebook from the couch and threw it across the room. Pages scattered everywhere, 40 years of documentation flying through the air. "You want to know what this means? It means everything I became was a lie. Every time I pushed myself harder, every time I refused to accept defeat, every time I drove my teammates crazy with my perfectionism, all of it came from a wound that my own family inflicted on me." Larry struggled to stand up from the couch. "That's not true, Mike. Your greatness isn't a lie." "Yes, it is. My motivation was fake. My drive was fake. The chip on my shoulder was put there by people who were supposed to love me. We did love you. You had a funny way of showing it." Michael's voice cracked with emotion. "Do you know what I went through that day? Do you know how it felt to see my name missing from that roster? I know. I watched you come home crying. You watched me question everything about myself. I thought I wasn't good enough. I thought I was worthless. I thought everyone was right to doubt me. And you knew it was all based on lies." Michael collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. "I can't believe this. I cannot believe this." Larry sat down beside him, his voice barely a whisper. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but you didn't. Neither of you did. You let me carry that pain for 40 years. Because you turned it into something beautiful. Look what you became, Mike. Look what you accomplished." Michael looked up, his eyes blazing with anger. "I became someone I didn't want to be. I became obsessed with winning because I was terrified of losing. I pushed away friends, family, teammates. I couldn't enjoy victories because I was always thinking about the next challenge. But you inspired millions of people. At what cost? I sacrificed relationships. I sacrificed happiness. I sacrificed my peace of mind. All to prove wrong people who never really doubted me in the first place." Larry's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Mike. I'm so sorry for all of it. Sorry doesn't fix 40 years of living. A lie, Larry. Sorry doesn't give me back the person I could have been if you hadn't destroyed my confidence. Maybe not, but your accomplishments are still real. Your greatness is still real, built on a foundation of deception." Michael stood up again, pacing frantically. "Everything I thought I knew about myself is wrong. The rejection that motivated me was fake. The doubt that drove me was manufactured by my own family." "Mike, please listen to me," Larry pleaded. "Yes, I wrote the letter. Yes, Dad let it happen. But what you did with that pain was your choice. You could have become bitter, angry, destructive. Instead, you became the greatest player who ever lived because I thought I had to. Because I thought the whole world was against me. Because you made me believe I wasn't good enough. The brothers stared at each other across the wreckage of their relationship. 40 years of love built on lies. 40 years of success built on manufactured pain. "I don't know if I can forgive either of you," Michael said finally. "I don't know if I can forgive Dad for letting it happen, or you for making it happen. I understand. I don't deserve your forgiveness." "No, you don't. But you know what the worst part is, Larry?" "What?" "Part of me wants to thank you. Part of me is grateful for what I became, even though it was built on lies. And that makes me hate myself as much as I hate what you did." Larry reached out tentatively and touched his brother's arm. "You don't have to hate yourself, Mike. You don't have to hate anyone. What happened was wrong, but what you became was right." Michael looked at his dying brother, seeing the 13-year-old boy who had made a terrible mistake, the man who had carried impossible guilt, and the brother who had loved him enough to finally tell the truth. "I need time," Michael said quietly. "I need time to process all of this. I don't have much time left." "I know, but I can't just flip a switch and forgive 40 years of deception, even if you are dying." Larry nodded, understanding. "I just needed you to know the truth. All of it. Even the parts that make me look worse. There's more." Larry's face crumpled. "There's always more, Mike. There's always one more secret, one more layer of pain. That's what lies do. They multiply. They create more lies to cover the original lie." Michael sat back down, exhausted by the emotional roller coaster. Tell me everything. I can't take any more surprises." Larry reached into the shoebox one more time, pulling out the final item, a medical report dated 40 years ago. "This is the last secret, Mike. The one that explains everything else. The one that might help you understand why a 13-year-old boy would do something so terrible to the brother he loved." Michael took the report, seeing his brother's name at the top. It was a psychological evaluation from Dr. Sarah Chun, dated just 3 months after the forged letter was sent. "What is this?" "The proof that I wasn't just jealous, Mike. The proof that I was sick." Michael stared at the medical report in his hands. The paper was yellowed with age, but the words were still clear. At the top, in official letterhead, psychological evaluation. Larry Jordan, age 13. "You went to see a therapist?" Larry nodded weakly. 3 months after I sent the letter. I started having panic attacks. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Mom thought I had the flu, but it kept getting worse." Michael's anger was slowly being replaced by confusion. "What kind of panic attacks?" "I would wake up screaming in the middle of the night. I'd throw up before school. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Mom finally took me to see Dr. Chun." Michael began reading the report aloud. "Patient presents with severe anxiety, depression, and guilt-related trauma. Larry reports engaging in a deceptive act against his older brother approximately 3 months ago. He appears to be experiencing significant psychological distress as a result. You were having a breakdown. I couldn't handle what I'd done to you, Mike. Watching you come home crying that day, seeing how broken you were, it destroyed me. But I was too scared to tell anyone the truth." Michael continued reading. Larry describes feeling invisible in his family dynamic. He reports that his older brother receives most of the attention and praise from parents and extended family. Patient feels inadequate and forgotten, leading to resentment and acting out behavior. Dr. Chun said I was suffering from what she called sibling shadow syndrome. "I felt like I didn't exist when you were around." Michael looked up from the report. "I never knew you felt that way. How could you know? You were 15 and focused on your own life. But every family dinner, every school event, every conversation, it was always about Michael's basketball games, Michael's grades, Michael's future. I felt like a ghost in my own family." Michael returned to the evaluation. Patient admits to forging a letter from his father to his brother's basketball coach, requesting that his brother be removed from consideration for the team. When asked why, Patient breaks down crying and states, "I wanted him to feel small like me. I wanted him to know what it felt like to be nothing." The words hit Michael like a punch to the stomach. Larry hadn't just been jealous, he'd been drowning in feelings of worthlessness. "You felt like nothing." Larry's voice was barely a whisper. "Every single day, you were everything I wanted to be. Tall, strong, confident, talented. Everyone loved you. And I was just Larry, Michael Jordan's little brother. But Mom and Dad loved you too. They loved me, but they were excited about you. There's a difference, Mike. They loved me like parents love a normal kid. But they were thrilled about you like people are thrilled about a miracle." Michael felt a sharp pain in his chest. He'd never realized how his success had affected his brother's sense of self-worth. Dr. Chen wrote something else here. Michael said, his voice shaking. Patient reports that since sending the letter, he has been unable to enjoy any activities. He spends most of his time watching his brother practice basketball, apparently trying to monitor the damage he believes he has caused. I became obsessed with watching you after that day. I had to see what my letter had done to you. I had to document how it changed you. That's why you came to all my games. Not to support me, but to watch what you'd created. Both. I was supporting you and torturing myself at the same time. Every great play you made, every point you scored, every win, I felt proud and guilty simultaneously. Michael continued reading Dr. Chen's notes. Patient demonstrates classic signs of depression and anxiety in children. He has developed obsessive behaviors around monitoring his brother's activities. Recommendation: intensive therapy to address guilt, self-worth issues, and family dynamics. Did you get the therapy? For 2 years. Dr. Chen helped me understand that what I'd done came from my own pain, not from actual hatred of you. She taught me coping strategies for the guilt. Did it help? Larry was quiet for a long moment. It helped me function. It helped me stop having panic attacks. But it never took away the guilt completely. How could it? I'd changed my brother's entire life trajectory. Michael set the report down and looked at Larry with new eyes. His brother wasn't just a jealous kid who'd made a terrible mistake. He'd been a child suffering from mental health issues, acting out in the worst possible way. Why didn't Mom and Dad tell me you were seeing a therapist? Because they didn't want to worry you. And because Dr. Chen advised them not to. She said telling you about my therapy might make you feel responsible for my problems. So they protected you by keeping me in the dark. They protected both of us. They knew if you found out I was falling apart because of what I'd done, you'd feel guilty. And they knew if I had to face your anger on top of my own guilt, it might destroy me completely. Michael stood up and walked to the window again. The Chicago skyline stretched out before him, but he barely saw it. His mind was reeling with this new understanding of his family's dynamics. Dr. Chun has one more note here, Michael said, picking up the report again. Patient's prognosis is guarded. While he responds well to therapy, the guilt he carries about his actions toward his brother may require ongoing treatment. His obsession with documenting his brother's success suggests he may never fully forgive himself. She was right about that part. Larry, you were just a kid. A sick kid who needed help. I was a sick kid who hurt the person I loved most in the world. Mental illness doesn't excuse what I did, Mike. It just explains it. Michael turned back to face his brother. But it changes how I think about it. You weren't acting out of pure malice. You were acting out of pain. Does that make it better or worse? Michael considered the question. I don't know. Maybe both. Larry reached into the shoebox one more time and pulled out a photo. It showed the two of them as children, maybe 8 and 10 years old. They were laughing, their arms around each other's shoulders. This is how I remember us before everything went wrong, Larry said. This is the brother relationship I destroyed. Michael took the photo and studied it. He remembered that day. They'd been playing in the backyard, pretending to be professional basketball players. Larry had been his teammate then, not his shadow. Do you know what Dr. Chin told me during one of our sessions? Larry asked. What? She said that people hurt the ones they love most because they're the only ones safe enough to hurt. She said I targeted you not because I hated you, but because deep down I knew you'd never stop loving me, no matter what I did. She said that. She said siblings often act out their worst impulses on each other because family love is unconditional. She said I subconsciously knew that hurting you wouldn't make you disappear from my life the way hurting a friend might. Michael felt tears forming in his eyes. So you hurt me because you trusted my love. I hurt you because I was broken, and you were the safest person to break against. It doesn't make it right, but it makes it understandable, maybe? Michael sat back down beside his brother. For the first time since the phone rang at 2 a.m., he felt something other than anger toward Larry. How did Mom and Dad handle your therapy? Dad blamed himself. He thought he'd failed as a father by not seeing how much pain I was in. Mom blamed herself for not noticing the signs earlier. Dr. Chun had to work with all of us. So the whole family was in therapy. For about 6 months. Dr. Chun said what I'd done was a symptom of larger family problems that needed to be addressed. What kind of problems? Larry pulled out another paper from the shoebox. Dr. Chin's family assessment. She said our family had what she called differential attention patterns. You got attention for achievement, I got attention for problems. She said it created an unhealthy dynamic where I felt I had to either succeed like you or fail dramatically to get noticed. And you chose dramatic failure. I chose to bring you down to my level instead of trying to rise to yours. Michael read through Dr. Chin's family recommendations. The report suggested more balanced attention from parents, individual therapy for both boys, and regular family sessions to address communication issues. Did we do family therapy? For a while. But then you started having success in high school basketball, and the attention shifted back to you. Dr. Chen said it was a natural family response to celebrate your achievements, but it reinforced the original problem. So nothing really changed. Not in the way it needed to. I learned to cope with my feelings better, but the basic family dynamic stayed the same. You remained the star. I remained the supporting character. Michael looked at his brother with growing understanding. Larry hadn't just made one terrible mistake as a 13-year-old. He'd spent his entire life living in a family system that made him feel invisible. I'm sorry, Larry. Larry looked up, surprised. You're sorry? For what? For never seeing how much pain you were in. For being so focused on my own success that I didn't notice my brother was struggling. You were just a kid too, Mike. It wasn't your job to fix me. Maybe not. But it was my job to love you. And I don't think I did a very good job of that. You loved me the best way you knew how. Did I? Or was I so focused on proving everyone wrong that I forgot to pay attention to the people who were right there with me? Larry reached out and touched his brother's hand. You're being too hard on yourself. Am I? Because looking back now, I can see how our family worked. I got attention for being great at basketball. You got attention for having problems. And neither of us got attention for just being us. Dr. Chun said the same thing. Maybe she was right. Maybe we were all broken in different ways. The brothers sat in silence, processing 40 years of misunderstood family dynamics. Outside, Chicago continued its daily rhythm, but inside Larry's apartment, two brothers were finally beginning to understand each other. There's one more thing, Larry said quietly. Something Dr. Chin told me in our last session that I've never told anyone. What? She said that someday, when we were both adults, I should tell you the truth about what I'd done. She said it was the only way either of us could be truly free. When did she say that? When I was 15. She said I'd know when the time was right. Michael looked at his dying brother. And now is the right time. Now is the only time I have left. The apartment fell quiet except for the sound of Larry's labored breathing. Michael sat beside his dying brother, holding the psychological report that had changed everything. The anger that had burned so hot just an hour ago was slowly transforming into something else. Understanding, sadness, and maybe the beginning of forgiveness. You know what the strangest part is? Michael said finally. What? I don't know who. I would have been without that rejection. Maybe I would have been happier. Maybe I would have been ordinary. I honestly don't know which scares me more. Larry managed a weak smile. You would never have been ordinary, Mike. Ordinary people don't become Michael Jordan. But would I have become the Michael Jordan everyone knows? The one who couldn't stand losing, who pushed everyone around him to be perfect, who treated basketball like life and death. Maybe not. Maybe you would have been a different kind of great. Michael stood up and walked to Larry's bookshelf, looking at the photos displayed there. Pictures of them as kids, family vacations, graduation photos. A whole lifetime of memories built around the secret Larry had been carrying. I keep thinking about that 13-year-old kid, Michael said. The one who felt so invisible that he was willing to destroy his brother's dreams just to feel important. He was pretty messed up. He was in pain. There's a difference. Michael turned back to Larry. I wish I had known. I wish I had seen what you were going through. You were 15, Mike. You had your own problems to worry about. But you were my little brother. I should have protected you instead of making you feel small. Larry shook his head. You never made me feel small. I made myself feel small by comparing myself to you. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I got so caught up in being the star that I forgot you existed sometimes. Remember when we used to play one-on-one in the backyard? Of course. I never let you win. Not once. Even when you were 10 years old and I was 12, I crushed you every single game. I thought I was teaching you to be competitive, but really I was teaching you that you'd never be good enough. Larry's eyes filled with tears. I loved those games, even when I lost. But they hurt you too, didn't they? Every loss was proof that you couldn't measure up to your big brother. Maybe. But they also made me feel like I mattered enough for you to play with me. Michael sat back down, the weight of 40 years of misunderstanding settling on his shoulders. We were both just kids trying to figure out where we fit in the family. And we both got it wrong. Did we? Or did the family get it wrong? Dr. Chen's report makes it sound like there were problems bigger than either of us. Larry nodded slowly. Mom and Dad did their best, but they didn't know how to handle having one exceptional kid and one normal kid. They celebrated your success without realizing it made me feel like a failure, and I fed into it. I loved being the special one. I loved being the center of attention. You were 15, Mike. Of course you loved it. What 15-year-old wouldn't? Want to be celebrated and praised? Michael picked up the old photo of them laughing together as children. I miss this version of us. When we were just brothers, not a star and his shadow. We can't go back to that. No, but maybe we can find a new way to be brothers. One that doesn't involve secrets and lies and 40 years of guilt. Larry looked at Michael with surprise. Are you saying you forgive me? I'm saying I'm starting to understand you. The forgiveness might take longer. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe. Not. But I'm tired of carrying anger, Larry. I'm tired of being driven by pain. Whether that pain came from Coach Herring's rejection or your letter or Dad's decision to let it happen, I'm tired of letting it control me. Larry reached for Michael's hand. What are you going to do with all of this? How do you move forward knowing everything you know now? Michael was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the question that would define the rest of his life. I don't know yet. Part of me wants to be angry forever. Part of me wants to thank you for making me great. Part of me wants to grieve for the person I might have been if none of this had happened. All of those feelings can be true at the same time. Can they? Because right now I feel like I'm being torn apart by contradictions. I'm grateful for my success, but angry about how I achieved it. I'm proud of what I became, but sad about what I lost along the way. Larry squeezed his brother's hand weakly. Dr. Chun used to say that complicated situations create complicated feelings. She said the goal isn't to resolve all the contradictions, but to find peace with them. How do I find peace with this? Maybe by understanding that love isn't perfect, that families aren't perfect, that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who love us most, just in broken ways. Michael looked at his dying brother and saw not the villain who had destroyed his confidence, but the little boy who had been drowning in feelings of inadequacy. You loved me, didn't you? Even when you wrote that letter. Especially when I wrote that letter. I was so desperate to matter to you, to affect your life in some way, that I was willing to hurt you to do it. That's twisted, Larry. Love often is, especially when you're 13 and mentally ill and don't know how to express what you're feeling. Michael stood up and walked to the window one more time. The sun was high now, casting sharp shadows across Chicago. Somewhere out there, people were living normal lives, unburdened by the kind of secrets that had defined his family. I keep thinking about something Dr. Chun wrote in that report. Michael said, "What?" She said you might never forgive yourself. But she was wrong about one thing. What was she wrong about? Michael turned back to face his brother. She thought the guilt would destroy you. But it didn't. It made you into someone who documented every moment of my success, who celebrated my achievements even though they were built on your mistake. It made you into the most dedicated fan I ever had. Larry's face crumpled with emotion. I never thought of it that way. You spent 40 years making sure my greatness was recorded, remembered, celebrated. You turned your guilt into a form of love. I just wanted to make sure that if my terrible mistake led to something beautiful, at least someone would remember that beauty. And you did. Every notebook entry, every game you attended, every moment you spent watching me play you, were loving me the only way you knew how. Even after what I did to you. Especially after what you did to me. You could have walked away, pretended it never happened, moved on with your life. Instead, you spent 4 decades bearing witness to what your pain had created. Larry began to cry. I don't know if that makes me a good brother or a terrible one. Maybe it makes you human. Maybe it makes you someone who loved imperfectly but completely. Michael sat back down and put his arm around his brother's shoulders. For the first time since the phone rang at 2 a.m., they were just two brothers trying to find their way back to each other. I have something to tell you too, Michael said quietly. What? Every championship, every record, every moment of triumph. I thought about you. Not just about proving Coach Herring wrong, but about making you proud. You were the first person I wanted to call after winning my first NBA championship. Really, really. Because even though I was angry about the rejection, I knew you understood the journey I'd taken to get there. You were the only one who knew how much that day had changed me. I was so proud of you, Mike. Even carrying the guilt, even knowing what I'd done, I was so proud to be your brother. And I was grateful to have you there. At every game, every celebration, every moment that mattered, you were there. Not as the kid who wrote the letter, but as my brother who believed in me. Larry leaned against Michael's shoulder, his strength fading. Do you think we can be okay? Before I die, do you think we can find peace with this? Michael held his brother close, feeling the weight of 4 decades of secrets finally lifting from both their shoulders. I think we already are okay. I think love doesn't require perfection, Larry. It just requires truth. And now we finally have that. All of it. All of it. The jealousy, the mental illness, Dad's role, the family dysfunction, the guilt, the love. All of it. I'm sorry it took me so long to find the courage. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand that courage isn't about being strong enough to carry secrets. It's about being strong enough to share them. The brothers sat together in the growing warmth of the Chicago morning, surrounded by the evidence of a secret that had shaped both their lives. The notebooks, the letters, the medical reports. All of it told the story of a family that had loved imperfectly but deeply. There's one more thing I need to tell you, Larry said as his eyes began to close with exhaustion. What's that? Thank you for becoming everything I always knew you could be. Even if it happened for all the wrong reasons, watching you become great has been the privilege of my lifetime. Michael held his dying brother and finally understood that sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people who love us most. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, those wounds can heal just in time. Larry dozed fitfully in Michael's arms for nearly an hour. When he woke, his breathing was more labored, his skin pale and cold. Michael could see that his brother was fading fast. How are you feeling? Tired, but also lighter somehow. Like I've been carrying a heavy bag for 40 years and finally set it down. Michael adjusted the blanket around Larry's shoulders. Is there anything else you need to tell me? Any other secrets? Larry was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ceiling. There's one more thing. Something I discovered just last week. Something that changes how I think about everything that happened. Michael's heart sank. After everything they'd been through, after finally reaching some kind of peace, there was more? What is it? Larry struggled to sit up straighter. Help me get to my bedroom. There's something I need to show you. Michael helped his brother stand and walk slowly to the bedroom. Larry pointed to his desk, where a manila envelope sat unopened. That came in the mail 5 days ago. It's from Coach Herring's widow. He died last month. Michael picked up the envelope, seeing his name written on it in shaky handwriting. She sent this to you. She sent it to both of us. But she addressed it to you because, well, you'll understand when you read it. Michael opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter and what looked like an old newspaper clipping. Coach Herring wrote this letter before he died. His wife said he'd been working on it for months, trying to find the right words. Michael unfolded the letter, seeing Coach Herring's familiar handwriting, the same writing that had been on the rejection notice 40 years ago. Dear Michael and Larry, he read aloud. I am writing this letter because I am dying, and there are things I need you both to know about that day in 1978 when I cut Michael from the varsity basketball team. Larry watched his brother's face as he continued reading. I have carried guilt about that decision for 43 years. Not because it was the wrong decision for the wrong reasons, but because it was the right decision for reasons I never told anyone. Michael looked up. What does he mean? Keep reading. When I received the letter allegedly from your father, I knew immediately it was forged. The handwriting was close, but not perfect. More importantly, the tone was completely wrong. James Jordan would never have written such a letter about his son. Michael's hands began to shake. He knew it was fake from the beginning. I called James to confront him about the letter. When he told me he hadn't written it, I should have thrown it away and put Michael on the varsity roster. Instead, I made a decision that has haunted me ever since. What decision? Keep reading, Mike. I had been coaching high school basketball for 15 years by then. I had seen hundreds of talented players come through my program, but I had never seen anyone with Michael's combination of skill, athleticism, and basketball intelligence. I knew that if Michael made varsity as a sophomore, he would dominate immediately. Michael set the letter down for a moment, his mind racing. Where is this going? Trust me, just keep reading. Here's what I never told anyone. The varsity team that year was special. We had 5 seniors who had played together since middle school. They were good kids from difficult backgrounds who saw basketball as their only chance for college scholarships. I knew that if Michael joined the team, he would quickly become the star. The ball would go to him, the plays would be designed around him, and those 5 seniors would become role players on their own team. Michael's throat tightened as he began to understand. I made the decision to cut Michael not because he wasn't good enough, but because he was too good. I was protecting those seniors' chances for scholarships and their senior season memories. Oh my God, Michael whispered. I told myself it was only for 1 year. Michael would dominate JV as a sophomore, then join varsity as a junior and still have 2 years to showcase his talents for college scouts. The seniors would get their moment, and Michael would get his later. Larry reached over and touched the letter. There's more. What I didn't anticipate was how the rejection would affect Michael emotionally. I watched him transform from a confident, happy kid into someone driven by anger and pain. I saw him work harder than any player I'd ever coached, pushing himself to exhaustion every day. Michael continued reading, his voice getting quieter. By the time Michael's junior year came around, I realized I had created something unprecedented. The rejection hadn't just motivated him, it had forged him into a basketball machine. He played with an intensity and focus that scared other players. He had turned my practical decision into his life's mission. He watched me change. He documented it just like I did. Keep reading. I want both of you to know that I never regretted keeping Michael off varsity that year because I saw what it created. All 5 of those seniors got college scholarships. They had their moment in the sun. And Michael became something greater than I ever imagined possible. Michael's eyes filled with tears as he read the final paragraphs. Larry, I know you've carried guilt about forging that letter, but you need to know that your letter didn't cause Michael's rejection. It just gave me an excuse to do what I was already planning to do. I had already decided to keep Michael on JV for that 1 year to protect the seniors. Michael dropped the letter and stared at Larry. Your letter didn't matter? It mattered, but not the way we thought. Coach Herring was already going to cut you for completely different reasons. So all this guilt you've been carrying was for something that wouldn't have changed the outcome anyway. Larry's voice was filled with wonder. I spent 40 years thinking I changed your life with that letter, but you would have been cut even if I'd never written it. Michael picked up the newspaper clipping that had been in the envelope. It was from the local sports page, dated March 1979. The headline read, Laney High Seniors Complete Cinderella Season with State Championship. Those 5 seniors won the state championship that year because they had the chance to be the stars of their own team instead of role players on yours. Michael read the article about the championship game. All 5 seniors had scored in double figures. 3 of them received college scholarships based on their performance that season. Coach Herring's plan worked perfectly. Those kids got their dreams, and you got the motivation that made you the greatest player who ever lived. Michael sat down heavily on Larry's bed, trying to process this final revelation. So my rejection was inevitable. Whether you wrote that letter or not, I was never going to make varsity that year. That's right. And Coach Herring knew exactly what he was doing. It wasn't about my character or my attitude. It was about protecting other kids' futures. He sacrificed your sophomore season to save 5 seniors' dreams. And in the process, he accidentally created your legendary drive. Michael looked at his brother with amazement. Do you understand what this means, Larry? Tell me. It means you didn't destroy my life. You didn't change my destiny. You didn't create my pain through some evil act of jealousy. I still wrote the letter. Yes, but the letter was meaningless. You were a sick 13-year-old kid who made a mistake that ultimately didn't matter. The real story was about a coach making an impossible choice between present fairness and long-term consequences. Larry began to cry again, but this time they were tears of relief. I didn't ruin your life. You didn't ruin anything. If anything, your letter gave Coach Herring cover for a decision he was already going to make. You accidentally helped him protect those seniors while giving you something to feel guilty about. 40 years of guilt for nothing. Not for nothing. For love. You carried that guilt because you loved me enough to care about how your actions affected me. even when those actions turned out to be irrelevant. Michael picked up Coach Herring's letter and read the final paragraph aloud. Michael, I hope you can forgive an old coach for manipulating your sophomore year for the greater good. And Larry, I hope you can forgive yourself for a letter that changed nothing except your own peace of mind. You are both good men who deserve to know the truth. The brothers sat in silence, absorbing the fact that their 40-year family secret had been built on a misunderstanding. Larry's guilt, Michael's anger, their father's complicity, all of it had been unnecessary. I don't know whether to laugh or cry, Michael said finally. Maybe both. All these years, you've been torturing yourself over something that didn't even matter. And I've been angry at you for something you didn't actually cause. But we learned something important from all this pain. What? Larry smiled weakly. We learned how much we love each other. It took 40 years and a deathbed confession, but we finally talked about the things that mattered. We finally told each other the truth about how we felt. Michael nodded, understanding. The letter brought us together, even though it didn't need to exist. Maybe that was its real purpose. Not to get you cut from basketball, but to eventually bring us to this moment of honesty. Michael helped Larry back to the living room, both of them emotionally drained, but somehow lighter. The weight of secrets was finally gone, replaced by the strange relief of discovering that their greatest family tragedy had been built on a misunderstanding. What happens now? Larry asked as they settled back on the couch. Now we spend whatever time you have left being brothers. Real brothers. No secrets, no guilt, no lies. Just love. Just love. Complicated, imperfect, human love. Larry closed his eyes, exhaustion overwhelming him. I can live with that. Or die with it. Michael held his brother's hand and watched him drift off to sleep, finally understanding that sometimes the truth sets you free in ways you never expected. The secret that had divided them for 40 years had ultimately brought them closer together than they'd ever been. Michael sat quietly watching Larry sleep, his mind racing with everything he'd learned in the past 10 hours. The afternoon sun streamed through the apartment windows, casting warm light across his brother's peaceful face. For the first time in years, Larry looked calm, as if the weight he'd been carrying had finally been lifted. His phone buzzed with text messages, people wondering where he was, meetings he was supposed to attend, a world that expected Michael Jordan to be somewhere else. But there was nowhere else he wanted to be than right here, holding his brother's hand as they both processed the truth that had changed everything. Larry stirred and opened his eyes slowly. How long was I asleep? About 2 hours. How are you feeling? Different. Lighter. Like I can breathe for the first time in decades. Larry struggled to sit up, his strength clearly fading. Mike, I need to ask you something important. Anything. What are you going to do with all of this? How do you live with knowing that your entire career was built on a misunderstanding? Michael had been asking himself the same question. Everything he thought he knew about his motivation, his drive, his legendary competitiveness, it all had to be re-examined in light of what he'd learned. I don't know yet. Part of me feels like my whole identity was fake. But it wasn't fake, Mike. Your accomplishments were real. Your greatness was real. The pain that drove you might have been unnecessary, but what you did with that pain was extraordinary. Michael stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city where he'd won 6 championships. But if I'd known the truth back then, would I have become the same player? Would I have had the same drive without thinking I had something to prove? Maybe not, but maybe that's okay. Maybe you would have been great in a different way, a happier way, possibly, but we'll never know. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Michael turned back to face his brother. What do you mean? Larry's voice was getting weaker, but his words were clear. Sometimes we need our pain to become who we're meant to be. Not because the pain is good, but because of what we choose to do with it. So you think everything happened the way it was supposed to. I think everything happened the way it did. And you turned a difficult situation into something beautiful. That's not fake, Mike. That's heroic. Michael sat back down beside Larry, still struggling with the contradictions in his own feelings. I keep thinking about all the players I pushed too hard, all the teammates I was cruel to, all the relationships I damaged because I couldn't stand losing. Those things were real, and they were part of the cost of your greatness. Was it worth it? Was becoming the greatest player ever worth becoming someone who hurt other people? Larry considered the question carefully. Only you can answer that. But I can tell you what I saw from the outside. What did you see? I saw someone who inspired millions of people to never give up. I saw someone who showed the world what's possible when you refuse to accept limitations. I saw someone who turned personal pain into universal inspiration. But at what cost to myself? To my family? To the people around me? At a real cost, but also with real benefits. Your competitiveness hurt some people, but it also lifted others. Your drive was exhausting, but it was also inspiring. You were complicated, Mike. Great people usually are. Michael picked up one of Larry's notebooks and flipped through the pages randomly. Entry after entry documenting his career, his achievements, his impact on the game. You really did document everything, didn't you? I had to. It was the only way I could live with what I thought I'd done. But now I realize I was documenting something else entirely. What? I was documenting how someone can take any situation, even rejection, even pain, even injustice, and transform it into greatness. I was watching you prove that circumstances don't define us. Choices do, even when those circumstances were based on lies. Especially then, because you didn't know they were lies. You made the choice to be great based on the information you had. That makes your achievements even more impressive, not less. Michael set the notebook aside and looked at his dying brother with new understanding. You've spent 40 years being my biggest fan. I've spent 40 years being amazed by what you became. Even carrying the guilt, even thinking I'd caused your pain, I was so proud to be your brother. And I've spent 40 years taking that support for granted. No, you haven't. You called me after every big game. You included me in every celebration. You made sure I was part of your success even when you thought I was just the little brother cheering from the sidelines. But I never really saw you, did I? I was so focused on proving everyone wrong that I forgot to appreciate the people who were already on my side. Larry reached for Michael's hand with surprising strength. That's not true. You saw me. You just saw me the way you needed to see me, as your brother, your supporter, your family. You didn't need to see my pain because I didn't want you to see it. Why not? Because your job was to be great. My job was to love you. We both did our jobs. Michael felt tears forming in his eyes. But your job shouldn't have included carrying 40 years of unnecessary guilt. Maybe not. But it did include watching you become everything I always knew you could be. And that was the privilege of my lifetime. Even knowing what you know now, even knowing the letter didn't matter. Especially knowing that. Because now, I understand that I didn't create your greatness through some terrible mistake. I witnessed your greatness despite my terrible mistake. That's even better. Michael stood up and began pacing again, his mind working through the implications of everything he'd learned. Larry, I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone. What? There were times during my career when I hated what I'd become. Times when I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back at me. Times when I wished I could just enjoy playing basketball instead of needing to dominate it. I know. You know. I could see it sometimes. In interviews, in the way you looked after big wins. You seemed almost angry that you'd succeeded, like success was a burden instead of a joy. It was a burden because I was playing for all the wrong reasons. I thought I was playing to prove Coach Herring wrong, to show everyone who doubted me that they were mistaken. But really, I was playing to heal a wound that didn't need to exist. Larry struggled to sit up straighter. But Mike, that's the beautiful part of this whole story. What is? You were wounded unnecessarily, but you chose to let that wound make you stronger instead of bitter. You could have become angry, resentful, destructive. Instead, you became inspiring. By accident. No, by choice. Every day, every game, every practice, you chose to work harder instead of giving up. You chose excellence over mediocrity. You chose to be great even when greatness was painful. Michael stopped pacing and looked at his brother. So you think I should be proud of what I became? I think you should be amazed by what you became. Not because of the circumstances that shaped you, but because of how you responded to those circumstances, even though they were based on lies. Especially because they were based on lies. You became great not because the universe was against you, but because you thought it was and decided to fight back anyway. That's not tragic, Mike. That's heroic. Michael sat back down, feeling something shift inside him. For the first time since learning the truth, he was beginning to see his story differently. So what do I do now? How do I move forward knowing what I know? You keep being great, but maybe now you can be great for better reasons. What do you mean? You spent 40 years trying to prove people wrong who were never really against you. Now you can spend whatever time you have left inspiring people who need to see what's possible. You think I can change? After all these years of being driven by the wrong motivations? I think you already have changed, just by sitting here with me, listening to the truth, choosing understanding over anger. You've already shown me a different version of Michael Jordan. A better version, a more complete version. The competitor and the brother, the legend and the human being. The person who became great and the person who can now teach others how to become great too. Michael looked around Larry's apartment one more time, taking in all the evidence of their shared history. The notebooks, the photos, the letters, the medical reports. All of it told the story of a family that had loved imperfectly but deeply. I want to ask you something, Larry. What? If you could go back and change what happened, would you? Larry was quiet for a long moment, considering the question that had haunted him for 40 years. If I could go back and erase my pain, yes. If I could go back and erase my guilt, yes. But if going back meant you never became the Michael Jordan the world knows? If it meant those millions of people who were inspired by your story never got to see what's possible when someone refuses to give up? What? Then no, I wouldn't change it. Because watching you become great has been worth every moment of pain I've carried. And knowing that your greatness inspired others makes all of it meaningful. Michael felt a profound shift in how he understood his own story. For 40 years, he'd seen his rejection as a tragedy that accidentally led to triumph. Now he was beginning to see it as something else entirely. Maybe the Real story isn't about rejection at all, he said quietly. What do you mean? Maybe the Real story is about love. About a brother who carried guilt he didn't need to carry. About a father who made an impossible choice. About a coach who sacrificed one player's happiness for 5 others' dreams. About a family that loved each other enough to keep difficult secrets. And about a player who turned all of that complicated love into something beautiful. Maybe. Or maybe it's about learning that our stories are never as simple as we think they are. That the pain that shapes us isn't always what we think it is. That the love that sustains us comes in forms we don't always recognize. Larry smiled weakly. That sounds like the Michael Jordan I've always known. Someone who can find meaning in any situation, even the difficult ones. I learned that from watching you, Larry. Watching you carry an impossible burden with grace for 40 years. Watching you love me even when you thought you'd hurt me. Watching you turn guilt into devotion. We both did the best we could with what we knew. And now we know better. And now we know better. The brothers sat together in the fading afternoon light, finally understanding that their story had never been about basketball or rejection or even secrets. It had always been about love, complicated, imperfect, human love that finds a way to survive even the deepest wounds. As evening approached, Larry's breathing became more labored. Michael could see his brother was fading, but there was a peace in his eyes that hadn't been there in years. They had spent the entire day excavating 40 years of buried truth, and now they were both exhausted but somehow lighter. Mike, I need to ask you something important, Larry said, his voice barely above a whisper. Anything. Can you forgive me? Not for the letter, we know now that didn't matter. But for 40 years of letting you carry pain that I thought I caused? For watching you struggle with demons that I believed I created? Michael looked at his dying brother and felt the last traces of anger dissolve completely. There's nothing to forgive anymore, Larry. We were both victims of the same misunderstanding. But I still wrote that letter. I still acted out of jealousy and pain. I still tried to hurt you, even if it didn't work the way I thought. You were 13 years old and mentally ill. You were a child in pain who made a mistake. Children make mistakes, Larry. That's what they do. Larry's eyes filled with tears. But it cost us so much time. So many years of carrying unnecessary guilt and anger. It also brought us to this moment. Would we be having this conversation if you hadn't called me at 2 a.m.? Would we be this honest with each other if we didn't have something big to work through? Maybe not. Then maybe the letter served its real purpose. Not to get me cut from basketball, but to eventually bring us to this place of truth. Michael helped Larry adjust his position on the couch, noticing how frail his brother had become. Even in the past few hours, time was running short, but for the first time all day, neither of them seemed afraid of that fact. I want to tell you something I've never told anyone, Michael said. What? Remember my Hall of Fame speech? When I talked about being cut from varsity and how it motivated me. Of course, the whole world remembers that speech. I lied during that speech. Not intentionally, but I got something important wrong. Larry looked confused. What do you mean? I said that getting cut made me who I am. But that wasn't true. What made me who I am was having people who loved me enough to watch me work through the pain. What made me who I am was having a brother who showed up to every game, who celebrated every victory, who believed in me even when he thought he was the reason I needed to prove myself. Mike, I'm serious. The rejection might have given me motivation, but you gave me something more important. You gave me unconditional love. Even carrying all that guilt, even thinking you'd hurt me, you never stopped being my biggest supporter. I was proud of you. No matter what I thought I'd done, I was always proud of you. And that pride, that love, that constant presence in my life, that's what really made me great. Not the anger from rejection, but the love from family. Michael stood up and walked to the bookshelf, picking up a photo of them from his college graduation. Look at this picture. Look at your face. Larry studied the photo. I look happy. You look proud. You look like someone watching his brother achieve his dreams. And I remember that day, Larry. I remember looking for you in the crowd after I got my diploma. I remember seeing you cheering louder than anyone else. It was one of the happiest days of my life. Mine too. And not because I graduated, but because I saw how proud you were. That's what really motivated me, Larry. Not proving Coach Herring wrong, but making my family proud. Larry began to cry softly. I never knew you felt that way. I never told you. I was so focused on being tough, on being the competitor who didn't need anyone, that I forgot to tell the people I loved how much they meant to me. You're telling me now. I'm telling you now because I finally understand what really happened between us. We both spent 40 years thinking the wrong thing was the most important thing. What do you mean? Michael sat back down and took his brother's hand. We thought the letter was the most important thing, but the letter was just a piece of paper. The love we had for each other. That was the real force that shaped both our lives. How so? You wrote the letter because you loved me enough to want my attention, even if it meant hurting me. I became great because I loved you enough to want to make you proud, even when I thought I was just trying to prove everyone wrong. Larry squeezed Michael's hand weakly. So love was always the real story. Love was always the real story. Everything else, the basketball, the championships, the fame, that was just the stage where our love played out. That's beautiful, Mike. It's true. And I need you to know something else. What? I forgive you. Completely. For the letter, for the guilt, for the 40 years of secrets. I forgive all of it because I finally understand that it all came from love. Larry's face crumpled with emotion. Thank you. I've been waiting 40 years to hear those words. And I forgive myself too, for being so focused on proving everyone wrong that I forgot to appreciate the people who were already on my side. For being so competitive that I sometimes forgot to be kind. For carrying anger that hurt me more than it helped me. You were doing the best you could with the pain you thought you had to carry. We both were. And now we can let it go. Michael helped Larry lie down more comfortably on the couch, covering him with a soft blanket. His brother's breathing was getting shallower, but his expression was peaceful. Larry, I want to make you a promise. What kind of promise? I promise that I'm going to tell this story, not to hurt anyone or expose family secrets, but to help people understand that love is complicated, that families are complicated, that sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who love us most. You think people need to hear that? I think people need to know that forgiveness is possible, that understanding can come even after decades of pain, that it's never too late to see the love hiding inside the hurt. Larry smiled weakly. I'd like that. I'd like for something good to come from all this mess. Something good already has come from it. We found our way back to each other. After 40 years. Better late than never. They sat quietly as darkness fell over Chicago. Michael realized that in 12 hours, his entire understanding of his life had changed. The rejection that he thought defined him had been necessary for reasons he'd never imagined. The brother he thought had betrayed him had actually loved him more faithfully than anyone else in his life. Mike, yeah. Are you okay? Really okay? With all of this? Michael considered the question carefully. I'm better than okay. For the first time in my adult life, I feel free. Free from what? free from the need to prove everyone wrong, free from carrying anger that was never necessary, free from the burden of thinking my greatness came from pain instead of love. What will you do with that freedom? I don't know yet. Maybe I'll learn how to enjoy victories instead of just moving on to the next challenge. Maybe I'll focus on inspiring people instead of intimidating them. Maybe I'll remember that basketball is supposed to be fun. Larry chuckled softly. Fun? What a concept. You taught me about fun, when we were kids, before everything got complicated. You reminded me that basketball was a game we played together, not a war I fought alone. I miss those days. Sometimes. Me too. But maybe we can have new days. Different days. Days where we're just brothers who love each other, without all the secrets and guilt and misunderstanding. I'd like that, even if it's only for a little while. Michael looked at his brother lying peacefully on the couch and realized that time was running out. But instead of feeling sad about the ending, he felt grateful for the beginning, the new beginning they'd found together in the space of one honest day. Larry, yeah, thank you. For what? For calling me at 2 a.m., for having the courage to tell me the truth, for loving me enough to carry that guilt for 40 years, for showing me that love looks like many different things, including the willingness to be honest when it's hard. Thank you for forgiving me, for understanding, for seeing the love in my mistake. Thank you for making the mistake in the first place, because it led us here, to this moment, to this conversation, to this understanding. Larry's eyes were closing now, exhaustion overwhelming him. I love you, Mike. I've always loved you. Even when I was hurting, even when I was guilty, even when I was scared, I never stopped loving you. I love you too, Larry. And now I know that love was always stronger than anything that tried to break it. As Larry drifted off to sleep, Michael sat beside him in the quiet apartment, surrounded by the evidence of their shared history. The notebooks, the letters, the photos, all of it told the story of two brothers who had loved each other imperfectly but completely. For the first time in 40 years, Michael Jordan felt at peace with his story. Not because it was perfect, but because it was true. Not because it was painless, but because it was meaningful. Not because it was simple, but because it was love. Michael stayed with Larry through the night, watching his brother's peaceful breathing and thinking about everything that had changed between them. As dawn broke over Chicago, painting the apartment in soft golden light, Larry stirred one final time. Mike, are you still here? I'm not going anywhere. Larry smiled weakly. Good. I was afraid I'd dreamed our whole conversation. It was real. All of it. I feel different. Like I'm not carrying that heavy weight anymore. Michael helped Larry sit up slightly, adjusting his pillows. How are you feeling? Ready. For the first time in 40 years, I feel ready to let go. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the city wake up outside the window. Michael thought about all the mornings he'd spent preparing for games, driven by the rejection he now knew had been inevitable. Today felt different. Peaceful, purposeful, free. Larry, I want you to know something. What? This has been the most important day of my life. Not my first championship, not my Hall of Fame induction, not any of the basketball stuff. This day? Today. Why? Because today I learned who I really am. Not the angry kid who got cut from varsity. Not the competitor who needed to prove everyone wrong. Just Michael, your brother. Larry's eyes filled with tears. That's all I ever wanted you to be. Just my brother. I know that now. And I want you to know that being your brother has been the greatest honor of my life. Even after everything. Especially after everything. Because everything led us here, to this moment, to this understanding. Larry reached for Michael's hand with what little strength he had left. I need to tell you one more thing. What? I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid to die because I'm not taking any secrets with me. I'm not leaving any love unspoken. We said everything that needed to be said. Michael squeezed his brother's hand gently. We did. We finally did. And Mike, yeah, I want you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll remember the good parts. Not just today, but all of it. The backyard games when we were kids. The way you used to let me tag along with your friends. The way you always made sure I was included in everything important. I promise. And promise me you'll be happy. Really happy. Not just successful, but genuinely happy. I don't know if I remember how to be happy. You'll learn. You have time to learn. And you have people who love you to help you figure it out. Michael felt tears streaming down his face. I don't want to lose you, Larry. You're not losing me. You're gaining something. What? The truth. The real story of our family. The knowledge that love survived everything we put it through. You'll carry that with you forever. But I'll miss you. You'll miss the guilt and the secrets and the pain we shared. But you'll remember the love. And that's the part that matters. Larry closed his eyes, breathing slowly and peacefully. Mike, I'm here. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for loving me enough to see past my mistakes. Thank you for trusting me with the truth. Thank you for loving me enough to carry that burden for 40 years. We did okay, didn't we? In the end, we did okay. We did better than okay. We found our way back to each other. Larry opened his eyes one last time and looked at his brother with complete peace. I love you, Mike. Always have, always will. I love you too, Larry. More than basketball, more than winning, more than anything. Larry smiled, closed his eyes, and took one final, peaceful breath. Michael held his brother's hand for a long time after he was gone, feeling the weight of 40 years of secrets finally lift completely. Larry had kept his promise, he'd told. The truth, all of it, and now both of them were free. Michael stood before a packed auditorium at the University of North Carolina. He'd been invited to speak about overcoming adversity, and the audience expected to hear the familiar story about being cut from his high school basketball team. Instead, he was going to tell them about Larry. Thank you for having me here today, Michael began, looking out at the sea of faces. I was invited to talk about overcoming adversity, and I want to tell you a story. But it's not the story you're expecting to hear. The audience settled in, curious about where this was going. 6 months ago, my brother called me at 2 a.m. with a secret he'd been carrying for 40 years. He was dying, and he needed to tell me something that would change everything I thought I knew about my own life. Michael paused, feeling Larry's presence with him. For my entire career, I've told people that being cut from my high school basketball team motivated me to become great. I've said that rejection taught me to never give up, to always prove the doubters wrong. And that was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. He could see people leaning forward, intrigued by this unexpected direction. The whole truth is more complicated and more beautiful than the simple story I used to tell. The whole truth is about family, about love, about the ways we hurt each other and heal each other, often at the same time. Michael told them about Larry's letter, about their father's decision, about Coach Herring's impossible choice. He told them about 40 years of carrying unnecessary guilt and anger. He told them about mental illness and family dysfunction and the price of perfection. My brother didn't create my greatness, Michael continued, but he taught me something more important than greatness. He taught me that love can survive anything: lies, secrets, decades of misunderstanding, even death. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. When Larry was dying, he asked me to forgive him, but what I realized was that there was nothing to forgive. We were just a family trying to love each other imperfectly but completely. Michael's voice grew stronger as he reached the heart of his message. So here's what I want you to understand. Your stories are never as simple as they seem. The pain that shapes you might not be what you think it is. The love that sustains you might come in forms you don't recognize. And the people who hurt you most might also be the people who love you most. He paused, thinking about Larry's final words. My brother spent his last day on earth making sure I understood that I was loved, not because of what I achieved, but because of who I was. He wanted me to know that being Michael Jordan, the basketball player, was impressive, but being Michael Jordan, the brother, was enough. That's the real lesson I want to share with you today. Not that rejection makes you stronger, though it can. Not that anger motivates greatness, though it might. But that love, even imperfect love, even complicated love, even love that comes wrapped in pain, is the force that really transforms us. Michael looked out at the audience and saw tears in many eyes. My brother is gone now, but his love isn't. It lives in every story I tell about him, every lesson I learned from him, every moment I choose understanding over anger. He taught me that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's about choosing to see the love that was always there, even when it was hidden. So I want to challenge you today. Look at your own stories differently. Look for the love hiding in your pain. Look for the family members who are carrying burdens you don't know about. Look for the chances to choose understanding over judgment, forgiveness over resentment, love over fear. Michael's voice cracked slightly as he reached his conclusion. The night my brother called me, I thought he was going to destroy everything I believed about myself. Instead, he gave me the greatest gift of all, the truth that I was always loved, even when I didn't know it, especially when I didn't know it. That's what I want for all of you. I want you to know that you're loved, not because you're perfect, not because you never make mistakes, not because you achieve great things, but because you're human, because you're someone's brother or sister or child or friend. Because love doesn't require perfection. It just requires presence. Michael paused one final time, feeling Larry's love surrounding him. My brother Larry taught me that the greatest victory isn't winning championships or breaking records. The greatest victory is learning to see the love that was always there, waiting for us to be brave enough to recognize it. Thank you. The auditorium erupted in applause, but Michael barely heard it. In his heart, he heard something else. Larry's voice, proud and peaceful, saying the words he'd waited 40 years to hear. You got it right, Mike. You finally got it right. As Michael left the stage, he realized that his brother's greatest gift hadn't been calling him that night with a secret. It had been teaching him that love, not basketball, was always the real game. And in that game, there were no losers, only people learning to play better. The story that had begun with a 2 a.m. phone call and a dying brother's confession had become something larger, a testament to the power of truth, the possibility of forgiveness, and the eternal strength of imperfect love. Larry was gone, but his legacy lived on in every person who heard their story and chose understanding over anger, love over fear, truth over comfortable lies. And Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player who ever lived, had finally learned the most important lesson of all, that being great at basketball was nothing compared to being great at love. Michael and Larry's story shows us that love can survive even the deepest secrets. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who love us most. They just don't know how to show it. We all have family members carrying burdens we don't know about. We all have chances to choose understanding over anger, forgiveness over resentment. Where are you listening from today? Drop your location in the comments. I love connecting with listeners from around the world. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button to help spread kindness. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing true stories that remind us what really matters in life. Speaking of incredible stories, click on the video appearing on your screen right now. You won't believe what happens next in this unbelievable tale of family, forgiveness, and the power of love. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to tell someone you love them.